आता प्रोग्रेसिव्ह इंडिया पक्ष आपल्या विषयाचे सादरीकरण करेल. माननीय पंतप्रधान आरुषी देशमुख यांना मी विनंती करतो की त्यांनी आपला विषय मांडावा.
Pranam, fellow members of the Parliament, Honorable Speaker and judges. I, Arushi Deshmukh from the Progressive India Party, am here today standing as the Prime Minister of our country to share my note on the current standards of Indian museums. I want to bring your notice that why it is not a good thing that the standards of our museums are not perfect. Though museums are a big part of a society and heritage, they are often ignored by many and are labeled as boring. As museums are often overlooked, young minds don't get enough exposure to experience them. Museums provide a surge of emotions and often change the mentality of people and provide knowledge that is invaluable to any person. Therefore, along with my fellow party members, we have put forth a lot of thinking into this situation and have arrived at the following issues regarding the standards of museums in India. The following problems point out the current standards of museums in India, which are not yet low but not high enough. First, lack of vision and expertise. In India, a large number of museums do not have directors, which leads to appointing officers as museum directors who lack expertise and knowledge of art practices and cultural practices. To solve this, better staffing and job requirements in museums will create enough standards for people to be motivated towards working in Indian museums, which will contribute towards making our museums better, whilst increasing employment. Second, human resources. Many museums in India are poorly staffed, and the existing staff lack the expertise and skill to efficiently manage collection and educate visitors. There are some sub elements to these problems, which are first, conservation and preservation practices. Improper conservation and preservation practices in museums have led to the destruction and loss of collection. For example, the 2nd BC Yakshi statue and 3rd BC Mauryan lion at the oldest museums of India were damaged due to the careless handling by inadequate trained museum workers, which is a matter of concern for the Human Resources Department. And then, for the problems regarding authenticity, it is the museum authorities' responsibility that they preserve their artifacts and train their employees to do the same, as these are the things that show us our history about our ancestors and provide us with the information. The problem regarding this certain issue also link up with our next context. Second, management issue. In 2010, an international organization brought out a report on the terrible conditions of India's top 8 museums, citing substandard maintenance, lighting, and signage, among other issues. Many visitors are often left with unexplained information about certain artifacts and unpleasant, creating a bad experience. This is why it should be seen that the employees at the museums know about the displays and can handle them carefully. Another problem is that many of the artifacts available in the museums are not shown. To exhibit those artifacts, museums should hire professional curators to curate certain artifacts to show every few months to cycle through their stock. This will also incentivize to visit some museums again and not make an excuse that they have already seen all the artifacts. Honorable Speaker, in a survey conducted in India, it was shown that many people are not showing interest in art and cultural activities and were devoting less time to them, as interest in it stood unincentivized. This is not a good thing in this very humming world, where often things are not done if there is no incentive for people to do them. This question cannot be blamed on the young people though, as the pressure from parents and the society doesn't create an environment for culture or arts. This shows us that an out of the box problem that does not appear in our minds if we think linearly, because this topic that we are covering here is extremely branched out and is influenced by many activities. Honorable Speaker, to fix this, we came up with a solution that links up with our previous solution for authenticity and human resources. Making more paying jobs in the art and cultural sector will motivate more people to follow their passion and use some natural talent to help them fix this situation. If we go through it deeply, we can see that the biggest problem causing the dropping standards of a museum is good talent. A hierarchical organization of employees and dividing them on the basis of the task will make it more easier to manage and handle them. This will allow them to work more efficiently without spreading the resources too thin. Third, security. The 2011 reports of an international organization observed that the national museums did not have proper security measures, thus leaving museums at a high theft risk. Honorable Speaker, to solve this, we can provide more funding for better protection system and guarding, as crime is not a thing that can be changed easily. It has to be fought back to an extent that crime seems to be like a major problem. Another problem that is not linked with human resources is audience engagement. Many museums in India fail to engage audiences. The museums have very few options to train in art management, curatorial management, design, or communication technology. So, we as a government should do whatever we can to create interests by museums by utilizing modern technology to attract younger citizens. We can do this by integrating AR VR experiences into museums to make them feel more interactive and informative for audiences uneducated about the set display. This method is already being used in different foreign museums and some Indian museums, but it should be promoted and given attention by the younger demographic. If we compare Indian museums to foreign countries, we can see a huge difference in popularity and accessibility. Its effect is a more integrated population. But one lesson we can take from them is their accessibility towards museums. They are found everywhere on the tourist spots like stadiums that show us their heritage and culture. So, what we think is putting forward cultural exhibits at top popular tourist spots in India to make use of all the stored artifacts. This will make India express more about its rich culture and heritage and make it recognized by the whole world and in India too. Fourth, another problem is that the information about museums is often pretty irrelevant to any common Indian citizen. For this, the action taken is to promote the knowledge of museums, their highlights, and their location. More knowledge about museums will create a stream of new visitors to museum. This will help us in our plan to standardize Indian museums. Fifth, disconnectment between academia and museums. There is a huge disconnect between academia and museums and very few options to train. Honorable Speaker, to solve this problem, we came up with a policy to build interest among young minds, which is to make it obligatory for school to visit the museums at least once during the school years. The visit should not be a show and tell trip. The students should be educated and told the stories behind shown artifacts and build interest among them. Students can encourage to prepare a report on any one artifact that impressed them. The same can be shared with fellow classmates to increase the popularity on particular artifact. Sixth, funding. Lack of proper funding is a major issue that deters the upgradation of museum infrastructure, use of technology, and proper maintenance of collection. Government museums make up at least 90% of the roughly 1,000 museums in India. They are restricted to have partnerships with private individuals or organizations and have to depend on the central funding even for day to day operations. Seventh, authenticity. It has been observed that various private organizations are falsely exhibiting the recent artifacts as old artifacts. A committee is to be formed to ensure that such incidents which hamper the history of our country are avoided. Honorable Speaker, therefore, we plan to do the following things to fund our amendments to the standards of Indian museums. First, lifting the ban on collaboration between museums under government surveillances to avoid malpractices. This will allow museums to operate smoothly and deal with any financial difficulties. Second, a 5-year plan for focusing on cultural affairs like museums, providing funding, and building small exhibits at tourist places. It would be evenly spread out and scheduled so there won't be any financial burden either. Third, workshops at museums to show how the shown artifacts were created and how to create things like that. Fourth, fundraising through programs on like a museum on wheelchair. There, the stored artifacts will be shown on the move, thus utilizing all available exhibits. Fifth, opening museum for longer duration during holidays. It will attract more crowd, which will bring in more money. Sixth, appointments of experienced professionals at museums all over the country to ensure that the museums are functioning efficiently. Seventh, museums have the power to create unity on both social and political level, but also on a local one. Local museums are able to provide a sense of community and place by celebrating a collective heritage, offering a great way to get to know the history of a particular area. Since it is a matter of center and state both, we wish to encourage more and more local government bodies to ensure that the museums are not simply a monument in cities, but also that they develop at the local levels. These museums can be a place where the local preserve their own culture and heritage. As technology and digitalization sees us becoming more and more globalized, institutions such as museums will offer a reminder to achievements and discoveries located closer to homes, bringing communities together. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, here is my final statement. It is a valid investment with promising everlasting returns. It is a field that can be used to generate money for funding itself under proper guidance, which is why I would recommend a 5-year plan focusing on the cultural affairs to give it more importance and promote our culture. Along with the educational factors, it is an investment that will surely pay back through a more educating demographic, which would be able to contribute to the country's interests accordingly and bring our country forward. I hereby conclude my speech. Thank you.
थँक्यू. धन्यवाद. यानंतर प्रश्नोत्तरांची वेळ सुरू होत आहे. पक्षाच्या नावाची घोषणा केल्यानंतर त्याच पक्षाच्या प्रतिनिधीने आपला प्रश्न विचारावा. सक्षम भारत पक्ष.
So, Honorable Prime Minister, my question is, many times you observe that guides can't understand languages of tourist people, so they remain unsatisfied with the services. So, what will we do with these problems if the translators or etc. Like the artificial or AI is not present? What will you do about it? How will you train your professionals to explain everything to everyone from each culture and each background?
Okay.
इंडियन कॅटलिस्ट पक्ष.
Myself Sharav Ladha from Indian Catalyst Party. So Honorable Prime Minister, my question to you is, since you are planning on displaying artifacts in the tourist places in India, so how will you get more human resource to manage those places?
Okay.
इक्विटी इंडिया पक्ष.
My name is Ananya Moye, and I had a question that how will you create awareness between people to maintain standards of museum?
Okay.
इंडियन रिपब्लिक पक्ष.
Honorable Prime Minister, what are you going to do to bring historical articles which are present in the foreign countries right now back to India?
Okay.
भारत समानता पक्ष.
As you know, our country is great in its architecture and ancient civilization, and we are pretty good in preserving them. So, what is your comment on it?
Okay.
धन्यवाद. सर्वांचे प्रश्न विचारून झाले आहेत. माननीय पंतप्रधानांनी उत्तरे द्यावीत अशी मी त्यांना विनंती करतो.
Okay, so I would like to get to the first question, which was about language barrier. So we will provide a manual in the museums, which will have 3 languages in it, and in that manual, the information will be there about all the artifacts available at the museums in 3 languages. One will be English, as our national language is Hindi, so Hindi, and the regional language which is mostly spoken in the states. If the curator fails to answer to satisfy the visitors, then the visitors can use the manual. The second question was about so we can say that there are many people who are interested in ancient heritage
30
and
सेकंदात आपलं उत्तर संपवा.
sure. There are many people who are interested in our heritage and the people who have passion as a history. So they can join museums as a professional job, and they can also work as a professional curators.
धन्यवाद. माननीय पंतप्रधानांची उत्तरे देऊन झाली आहेत. आता ज्यांनी प्रश्न विचारले आहेत त्या 5 खासदारांनी कृपया उभे राहावे.
You didn't answer my question.
You also didn't answer my question.
Okay, can you please repeat it?
How will you create awareness between people to maintain standards of museum?
We can create awareness by we can collaborate with the Ministry of Broadcasting, so that we can spread awareness about museums and advertise on televisions as well.
Prime Minister, respected Prime Minister.
Yes.
So I think it is not just about interest. Even if you find people who are interested to work in the museums, they might not have the right information on museum management, as there are very less colleges and courses educating people on museum management.
Why do you think so?
Because there is a certain way in which the ancient artifacts should be handled. So it could be possible that people would not have the right information.
There are a ample of colleges in India which are specifically about history, and there are also museologists who are experts in museums. So how do you think they become museologists?
Respected Prime
Honorable
Minister.
Prime Minister, I wanted to ask, how will you plan out the budget for getting technology of VR and etc., which are very costly?
Yes, so for that we are also having private organizations which help us for the funding, and there are also funds which are the specific budget which is given to the cultural of ministry to provide funds to the museums
Respected
on an
Prime
annual
Minister.
basis.
What
Even
are you going to-
sponsorships are there. We can provide network funding.
Respected
Excuse me,
Prime
Prime
Minister, you
Minister.
did not answer my question.
Yes, please repeat it.
Yeah. As you know, our country is great in its architecture and ancient civilization, and we are pretty good in preserving them in comparison to other countries. So, what is your comments on that?
Let me clear that museums come under the Ministry of Culture, and the question you are asking right now comes under ASI, Archaeology Survey of India.
So you are claiming that there are many colleges. So what will be your contribution as the government in making people aware about those colleges, so they start enrolling into it, so they have the right information to work?
The same answer which I gave to her Ministry of Broadcasting, we can also advertise. And even there are many colleges, as we apply for normal colleges, you can specify your subjects, and according to that you can get the colleges.
Prime Minister, what are you going to do to bring the historical articles which are present in foreign countries back to India?
Yes, so the artifacts which belong to us, but they are in the foreign countries, are given as a form of gifts. Like I may give an example of the sword of Shivaji Maharaj, which is in a museum of a foreign country, but that was given as a form of gift, so we can't bring it back.
But what if there are no artifacts to keep in museum? Then what is the use of museums then?
India was and will be very rich in culture. It's like almost impossible that we run out of artifacts to store in museum.
धन्यवाद.
Thank you.
आता सत्ताधारी पक्षाने आपला ठराव सदनासमोर मांडावा.
Some issues require a scheme or apps or websites to attract people interest, while some issues require a structured system. Standards of Indian museums come in the second category. So, for our plan to act for action for a resolution, we intend to solve the problem with the standards of Indian museums to improve the conditions and take care of the problems accordingly by first creating a better public popularity. Second, devoting some time for the country's resources to the cultural and art sector of the country, especially museums. Third, lifting the ban on cooperation between museums. Fourth, creating job opportunities in the heritage sector and executing a 5-year plan towards our heritage, which will increase self-sufficiency and decrease dependency on of museums on government exponentially. So, Honorable Speaker, I request all the parties to think wisely and vote accordingly. Thank you.
पंतप्रधानांनी मांडलेल्या ठरावावरील मतदानासाठीची वेळ आता सुरू होत आहे. ठराव 20 विरुद्ध 2 मतांनी मंजूर करण्यात आला असे आम्ही जाहीर करतो. माननीय सभापतींना मी विनंती करतो की त्यांनी सत्ताधारी पक्षाने मांडलेल्या विषयाबद्दल मार्गदर्शन करावे.
मित्रांनो, अतिशय चांगली चर्चा तुम्ही या विषयावर घडवून आणली. तुमच्या माहितीसाठी सांगतो, अमेरिकेचं जे व्हाईट हाऊस आहे त्याच्यासमोर मंत्र्यांचे बंगले नाही आहे. त्याच्यासमोर काय आहे? जगातले सगळ्यात मोठे 4 म्युझियम आहेत, समोरच आहेत. असं देश घडवायचा असेल तर आपल्याला प्रत्येक गोष्टीकडे संवेदनशीलतेने बघायला शिकलं पाहिजे. बरोबर? आपण ज्या गड किल्ल्यांना भेटी देतो तिथे काय सापडतं आपल्याला? प्रत्येक दगडावर एक चित्र कोरलेलं आहे. कोणी कोरलेलं आहे? ते आपणच केलेलं आहे. बरोबर आहे ना? शेक्सपियरची खुर्ची, त्याचं पेन, त्याची वही ही आपल्याला इंग्लंडमध्ये बघायला मिळते 400 वर्षानंतर. बरोबर आहे? आपण आपल्या शाळा महाविद्यालय, तुम्ही ज्या शाळेत शिकला त्यातल्या काही शाळा नक्की 100 वर्षाच्या आहेत. बरोबर? तर तुम्हाला अशी तुमची कुठली शाळा आहे का मला सांगा ज्याच्यात 100 वर्षापूर्वी जे संस्थापक होते ते बसलेली खुर्ची बघायला मिळाली, त्यांनी टाकदौत वापरला तो बघायला मिळाला? अशी कुठली शाळा आहे? हे आपलं म्हणजे आपण डॉक्युमेंटेशनमध्ये किती मागे आहोत हे दर्शवतं. बरोबर आहे? मी आता साखर आयुक्त आहे, तर जगातलं पहिलं शुगर म्युझियम करायचं मी आता ठरवलं आहे आणि त्याला शासनाची मंजुरी पण मिळाली आहे. भारत आता जगात 1 नंबरचा साखर उत्पादक देश झाला आहे आणि ऊस आणि साखर ही आपली स्ट्रेंथ असताना हे म्युझियम करायची कल्पना यायला 100 वर्ष लागली शुगर इंडस्ट्रीला. ह्याचा सगळा कन्सेप्ट मी लिहून काढला आहे. म्हणून मी तुम्हाला मुद्दाम सांगतो की आपण डॉक्युमेंटेशनमध्ये फार मागे आहोत. तुम्हीसुद्धा लहानपणच्या तुमची पहिली वही, तुमच्या शाळेतलं पहिलं कवर लावलेलं पुस्तक है ना, पहिला आवडता पेन, आवडता ड्रेस, हे सगळं प्रिझर्व करा. आत्तापासून सवय लावा. लक्षात आलं? एक छोटं उदाहरण मी तुम्हाला सांगणार आहे. गांधीजींना गोळ्या घालण्यात आल्या, माहिती आहे आपल्याला. ते 2 थेंब रक्त खाली सांडलं आणि ते ज्या लॉनवर सांडलं त्या लॉनचा तुकडा आता इंग्लंडच्या म्युझियममध्ये आहे. तुम्ही इमॅजिन करू शकता, आत्ताचा जर कुठलाही पोलीस ऑफिसर गेला तिथे तर तो कुठल्याही अशा क्राईमच्या ठिकाणी जर गेला असता तर त्यांनी ते त्याच्या बोटाखाली तोडून टाकलं असतं. ब्रिटिश अधिकारी असल्यामुळे तेवढ्यात ह्याला कसं सुचलं असेल तेवढा तुकडा त्यांनी लॉनचा काढून आता ब्रिटिश म्युझियममध्ये आहे. मागच्या वर्षी त्याची विक्री करण्यात आली. एकूण विक्रीची किंमत आली आहे 30 लाख पाऊंड. लक्षात आलं? आपल्याला हे कळतच नाही आहे किती आपल्याजवळ ट्रेजर आहे. लक्षात आलं? तुम्ही माझं मत असं आहे की याच्याकडे संवेदनशीलतेने बघायची दृष्टी जरी तुम्हाला या विषयामुळे आली तर आपण फार काही कमावलं असं होईल. मी सगळ्यांचं मनापासून अभिनंदन करतो. धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद.